Dana White accused Francis Ngannou of shoving him during some sort of heated altercation back when Francis Ngannou had beef with the UFC and they were, going back and forth with negotiations and trying to determine a contract. And this went on for years, and I'm surprised to hear this, and I'm also surprised to see now a reporter actually come out to kind of say, hey, that behind the scenes, Francis Ngannou kind of was a bully, verifying some claims that Dana White said. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, Francis Ngannou is 100% guilty. I'm going to get into that, but I want to see what Dana White says. We're also going to see what this new reporter came out to say to kind of verify it, and we're also going to look at a past incident that I think we should look at, with Francis Ngannou that's kind of relevant now that we're having a conversation of, is Francis Ngannou a bully? You know what I mean? Let's get into it, guys. Let's see what Dana White had to say.
Francis Ngannou is a bad guy. He's not a good guy. He plays the whole, I don't understand the language, and he tries to come off like he's a fucking nice guy, you know what I mean? And people go, it's the language barrier probably. No, there's no fucking language barrier with this guy. He's a bad guy. I wanted to cut him early. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. So he's going in to fight Stipe Miocic in Boston. He knows he's going to fucking kill Stipe. So after the press conference, we're walking down this hallway, and he comes over to me and he grabs me. And he says, let me tell you what's going to happen. His English is fucking great, okay? No language barrier whatsoever. When this fight's over, you're going to book me a private plane to Paris. And I said, I laughed and said, oh yeah? He goes, I'm not joking. You're going to book me a private plane. Okay. So we go our own ways. Stipe Miocic beats the fucking shit out of him. So that ended that whole conversation. I should have fucking cut him that day. When you're an athlete that's signed by the UFC, you get full access to the Performance Institute, and you can eat there for free. Everything's free, and do all this stuff. This guy was fucking living there, right?
So this is the first of two incidents that Dana White is going to talk about. The other one is where Francis actually puts his hands on him, but this incident is one that we kind of heard before. Like, Dana White has made this accusation before that Francis would ask for ridiculous things like a private jet, something that obviously no other fighter gets in the UFC, which a private jet might be excessive, but I mean, come on, there's definitely a lot of things that fighters do not get that they should get. I mean, what about just healthcare? Outside of a fight, can they get some sort of healthcare? You know what I mean? Like, these are all little things that the UFC could do as like, hey, guys, keep in mind, multi-billion-dollar company that they could do for their fighters that they don't do. There is frustration, with the UFC and how they do things. And I feel like a lot of this is very like Dana White's perspective. And through that, we can kind of forget that, yeah, the UFC does notoriously fuck over fighters with how much they pay. I mean, look, I've always said, like, maybe the exact number is fine. Like, I'm fine with that, but give fighters an opportunity to get sponsors in the octagon. Don't be selfish and, cap their money and take away all the money for yourself. It's ridiculous. Or at least add healthcare. Just have more services like that or something like that, and I would be okay with the pay. Now, Francis has actually answered to this allegation before, saying that one of the first things Dana White promised him was said, hey, when you get the belt, you're going to get a private jet to France, right? And I think this was Dana White kind of saying, oh, you're going to be a superstar, because Dana White was heavily hyping up Ngannou. I think he was like, look, you win the belt, you're to the moon. You know what I mean? Like, this is your chance. And Francis is kind of saying here, he was, kind of making a reference to, that promise. And that's why he was doing it. It was like, hey, it's not an ego problem. Dana White brought this up first. There's a lot of things fighters don't get. I think the private jet is the least of the issues. I mean, can we talk about like I said, the healthcare?
And he had just fought, and he comes up to my office. I said, come on in, what's going on? And he was pissed off that he didn't get a $50,000 bonus. Francis, you didn't get it because this, that. And he's in my office and he's arguing with me. The conversation's over. I'm starting to leave. And he grabs me by my shirt.
Fuck.
And like pushes me back in my office. And I said, dude, get your fucking hands off me.
Those were the words that came out of you when Francis Ngannou grabbed you by the shirt?
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
I would have been like, I hated this shirt. It's too tight.
Well, it's like,
snuggle me, this shirt.
But it's no, I could see in this guy's face and in his eyes and in the way he's acting who this guy really fucking is.
Now, Dana White does say another important thing that we're going to get into, but just to break down this interaction, first of all, I mean, I don't really believe, come on, there's no way Dana White said that to the heavyweight, well, not heavyweight champion then, but one of the hardest hitting fighters of all time. Like, if Francis Ngannou does that to me, I'm probably folding, bro. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, it's insane that he would do this to Dana White, like, just to your boss. Like, if this is a true story, I mean, look, obviously arguments are one thing, putting your hands on another thing, it's not that it's messed up. It is what it is. Like, honestly, if this story is true, Dana White has done, obviously, in the UFC in general, have done a lot of shit things that, come on, at the end of the day, it was bound to happen by somebody. I think this is a very weird thing to get upset about a private jet and all of this and a bonus. It's not necessarily the biggest issues that I think should be addressed. I really don't care. I just think this is an insane story. Like, no way, man. Francis Ngannou really did this.
Then my guy Hunter, they were talking about something. It might even have been the same thing. And when Hunter started to walk away, Francis grabbed him by the fucking back of his collar and fucking pulled him back, said, we're not done talking yet. So this guy's not a good fucking guy. He's a bad guy. Now he's over and he's done a deal with PFL in Saudi Arabia. And now he's asking to fight, me and John Jones need to fight, and fucking, I'm sure they wish they never fucking signed him. Because I know. I've dealt with him. I know who he really is. And
yeah.
Now, there's two big, massive pieces of information that Dana White gives, and especially the second one, but obviously the biggest one, Hunter got some strays. Hunter, I guess, was done with the conversation and said, look, we're clearly not going to come to an agreement. Let's just separate, go our separate ways, think about it, and reconvene. But Ngannou grabbed the collar and said, nah, you ain't going away. And like I said, this is all crazy. Like, doing this to a boss, to me, it's just like, wow. Like, Francis seems like totally like a chill dude. He really does not seem like a guy that would cause so much problem for, seemingly no reason. Like, this private jet, the bonus, yeah, it's frustrating stuff, but we've seen guys with even worse travesties, that don't get bonuses. Like Terrence McKinney barely gets any bonuses. You know what I'm saying? So there's tons of fighters that have been screwed over, but they're not putting their hands on their boss. You know what I mean? It's still really, really crazy. But the second piece of information that I thought was interesting, and something that, does kind of help Dana's argument, is what he said about, look, Francis Ngannou, he just signed to PFL, right? And we just saw recently, just a few weeks ago, that he was talking about the fact that he wanted to fight John Jones at the White House, which is a very weird, random call out. And a lot of fans even were saying, hey, is Francis Ngannou kind of doubling back, once saying, oh, the UFC is so bad, this and that, now trying to get back into the UFC. Like, how are you going to say that a company is so evil, trying to rob you and make all of these allegations, and then come back a few years later and seemingly want to fight like everything's normal? Like, you guys didn't have like one of like the worst exits in MMA history, let's be honest. But seriously, look at what Dana White is saying here. He is saying, like, look, he is now signed to PFL, and they're regretting signing him because look how he's acting. It is an ego issue, which that is what he's doing. He's signed to PFL, fought once in the organization, has basically done more boxing matches than MMA fights at this point, being under their contract. And let's be honest, taking advantage of the PFL in a way, taking all their money, and basically making them go bankrupt now, and doing other fights, not even doing the fights that you promised to do. I'm saying, like, PFL's gotten screwed. They've only got one fight, and that was that. It barely built up the PFL brand. I don't know whose fault, if it's Francis's fault, if it's PFL's fault, who knows? But it's not a good look when he's calling for other fights, especially other MMA fights that are not even in the PFL organization. It shows that he doesn't necessarily respect the business relationship. And if you are the business doing business with Francis, I can understand why you feel a certain way about it. And look, the number one thing in this whole thing, because it's going to be a he said, she said, or he said in this case, of, Francis did this, Dana did this, blah, blah, blah. We have to look at other, I think, eyewitness testimony. What have people been saying? And I did look into it. There isn't a lot. I will say, I think Ngannou, one of the most interesting ones was Ngannou and his coach. They had a little bit of a falling out. Fernando Lopez was Ngannou's coach in France for a long time, and then it got to a point where he said Francis' ego became a problem and laughed at paying 600 euros a year just to be at the gym, which I'm sure for France, I don't know when this was in his career, but look, that's a pretty reasonable fee. I mean, that's less than most gyms, at least in New York. So, but there was no physical altercation there at all. I mean, obviously the coach did say that he asked Francis to leave and things like that. But this new report is very interesting because we had someone in the media space, Ant Evans, who, is in the MMA space, has been for a long time, come out just out of nowhere to kind of back up a lot of what Dana White was saying and saying, hey, I've kind of experienced this myself with Ant Evans. I mean, this it's kind of far-fetched why he would lie. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so here's what he said. He said this on Twitter. I haven't heard this story before. I believe it 100%. Francis was a terror at the UFC office when I worked there. He'd show up over and over, walk around the offices, standing over people's desks, making staff very uncomfortable. Now, some of it was he was a huge man from a different culture speaking English as a third language, and there is such a thing as being proactive. And then Ann Evans also said it's 8 years or so some of the specifics are hazy, but one I witnessed myself was him standing over one of the women who designed UFC key art and wanted changes. Don't misunderstand, nothing like putting his hands on anyone, but he's a big scary dude and he had no business standing over people's desks telling them what he wanted. Almost all fighters are at their worst selves fight week, the pressure, the weight cut, etc. Francis was unreal obnoxious to people just doing their jobs. I mean, this is very harsh words, I gotta say, from Ann Evans. And while I said, look, I don't know why he would lie, nothing he has said has at all justified saying that he's obnoxious to people or that he was rude. Standing over people's desks and demanding changes, to me, maybe he's just a very, I don't know how to put it, but maybe Francis is just a really vain guy. Like, this doesn't really seem rude to me. And I think saying he's a big, scary guy, to me, I mean, it's not a crime to be a big, scary guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a bit ridiculous to use all of this to say, oh, yeah, like, this is him being a bully. These are harsh words, harsh allegations. And for Ann Evans just to say this with this proof, I think he needs to come out with a little more than something else. Like, either he knows something that he is not saying and say it, or this is literally all he knows, and I don't know why he would think this. I mean, to me, I don't know. I really don't know why he would lie even, but just you need to get more specifics. This is not justifiable to say this. So for me, this doesn't really back up anything. I mean, it is something to say that someone came out and said that they could see Francis as a bully, but I would have liked more specifics at Ann Evans, and he didn't give it. Now, one last incident I wanted to go over that, is interesting to talk about is Ngannou and Chael Sonnen. They do have a little bit of beef, and notably, Chael Sonnen did talk about an interaction with Ngannou where there was some good and also some bad. You could take a look at it, but we saw that Francis got very upset because Chael was on the side of the UFC at the time, agreeing with the UFC back when they had beef. Of course, I'm talking about Ngannou having beef with the UFC where he was a heavyweight champion, wanted to go into boxing. And because of this, the UFC and Ngannou did split. They were not happy about the split. Dana talked bad about Ngannou. Ngannou talked bad about Dana White, of course. But Chael was, in the crosshairs agreeing with the UFC. And I guess Ngannou took issue with this. Like, there isn't, once again, I want more specifics, because, I mean, this now goes more on Ngannou's side. Like, what did Chael say that crossed the line? I don't really remember, to be honest. This is now years ago, so I don't even know what Chael said. I doubt if you're just giving your opinion, it's like, come on, you're going to get pressed over this. So they interacted with each other at the Nate Diaz and Jake Paul fight that happened a few years ago. And in the parking garage, they were kind of, having a bit of a face-off. It was a bit of a tense interaction. Security warns them and is like, yo, chill out. Chael Sonnen's son is, actually in the corner watching them. And Chael's like, yo, my son is here, chill. And apparently Francis chill. And then this is what Francis does.
I'm within arm's reach. I can't move. Now, I also can't put my hands up because that's provocative. I'm not sure what he wants to do. And this is going through my head. When I was a little kid, I believe around the 6th grade, Mike Tyson got called out in a bar fight in Brooklyn, and he went outside and he punched the guy one time. Mike Tyson shattered the guy's face, and that is how the news reported. I don't frankly know what that means. The news said Mike Tyson hits him one time and shatters the guy's face. So when I'm face-to-face with Francis, it's all I can think about is, okay, you're bigger than Mike and you have the same belt that he does. If you hit me like Mike did that guy, how bad is a shattered face? Like, this is going through my head. But in fairness, I don't want this to happen. And I I can't take my eye off him. And I hear security. I'm looking at him. And I say, Francis. And I said, not in front of my son. And Francis looks over and he sees this little kid shadow boxing. He didn't know it was my son. He looked over. He saw my son. He stopped.
No shit.
Respect. Full respect.
Big time.
He looked over and he looked right back and he did not say a word. And he wanted to. And silence. And he even took a step back and we went our
It would have been a different story if you looked at your son and your son went, let's get him back. Dad, I got your back.
You think Francis genuinely in that parking lot wanted to knock you out?
Oh, he definitely did.
So according to Chael, it does seem like Francis has some emotional control. You could see he was very angry. According to Chael, he said he was pissed off. And Francis was able to turn it off and say, look, I'm not going to fight him in front of his son. Now, listen, to be fair, fighting in front of someone's kid is very different than, maybe pressing a boss, pressing an older guy that you feel is taking advantage of you. Okay, that is fair. And I'm not saying this automatically disproves Dana White's story. But once again, I got to give you all the facts. what is my opinion? I honestly don't know what to make of all this because, you know, Dana has lied before. Dana White, it's hard for me to say why would Dana White lie because we've seen him lie before. And when you're lying, I don't think you deserve the benefit of the doubt anymore. You're becoming unreliable. And it's the boy who cried wolf. Come on, we all learned about this when we were in like nursery. You know what I'm trying to say? Like you're capping too much. We're gonna know you're capping, you know, or we're gonna just assume it because why would we believe you? Why are we gonna waste the time to believe you? Dana White has lied numerous times. Unfortunately, I'm not really inclined to just take his word. So I don't know. I'm not gonna say I think Ngannou's innocent just because I wouldn't be shocked. Like, you know, I don't know. This seems like an odd story, and we'll see if Ngannou comes out and refutes it ever. If he refutes it, I will actually agree then that Dana was lying. But until then, I don't know. I'm curious to see how this develops. There might not even be a development, guys, but let me know, who do you think is telling the truth, Dana White or Francis Ngannou? I really don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Check out my last video where we talked about the UFC middleweight division, and I matched up all the different UFC middleweights and made the best matchup. You guys are the best fan base in MMA. Hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.